Everyone, my name is Josh and this is Whimsical Industry Musings. And today I want to talk to you about the horror film Scream, released in 1996, written by Kevin Williamson and directed by Wes Craven. Now, when this film came out, it was kind of at the height of a horror movie sort of downfall, where a lot of the successful, quote unquote, successful horror film franchises were starting to die out, and popularity in the horror film genre just was kind of, sparse and desolate. They were basically a box office bomb, they were box office killers, and a lot of people were just kind of burned out from the horror movie genre. And Kevin Williamson, in a desperate attempt to basically write a script and to get it to studios, he was house sitting one night and he basically came across a documentary involving a serial killer called the Gainesville Ripper who went to student dorms and basically horrifically butchered and did all sorts of other horrible things. And the film sort of the event sort of inspired him to basically create this script of, Scream, Scary Movie it was originally called. And the film follows a group of teenagers who are being under the grip of a serial killer in a small town. And the entirety of the film is basically a mashup between a wonderful self-aware parody of the horror film genre, taking, cheap jabs or very accurate jabs at the horror genre, like, certain conventions such as don't drink, do drugs, or have sex, otherwise you'll die. You have to be kind of, pure and, very kind of, you have to be the plain Jane virgin in order to survive kind of thing. But he also tries to mix in a lot of very serious moments as well. And what I really like about this film is it really does have a great cast. It has a well-written script. It's very well shot as well. Wes Craven and Kevin Williamson did a fantastic job with this film. And it opens with a character by the name of Casey Becker who is just spending the night in. She's about to watch a video and she gets a phone call. And it starts off as, one of those, you have the wrong number things. But then Ghostface starts to think, oh no, wait, don't hang up. I want to talk for a little while. Like, what's your name? And she goes, I don't think so. And then he hears her shaking the popcorn packet as she's putting it on the stove. And she goes, oh, what? He goes, oh, what's that noise? And he goes, oh, it's popcorn. I'm about to watch a video. And she goes, oh, you're about to watch a movie? What kind of movie is it? And she goes, well, it's a scary movie. And she goes, oh, you like scary movies? What's your favourite? She goes, oh, I don't know. And he goes, oh, come on, you have to have a favourite. And she goes, oh, Halloween. You know, the one with the guy in the mask and he talks babysitters. And he goes, oh, that's a good movie. And she goes, what's yours? And she goes, oh, what's the one with the guy who stalks people in their dreams and he has those razor finger things? And she goes, oh, that's Freddy Krueger, Nightmare on Elm Street. He goes, oh, I like that movie. And she goes, yeah, the first one's good, but the rest suck. And then it starts off very casually and she goes, oh, he goes, oh, do you have it gets to the point in the conversation where he goes, oh, well, do you have a boyfriend? She goes, oh, why do you want to know if I have a boyfriend? Are you planning on asking me out on a date? And then it starts to get very disturbing when he says, you never told me your name. And she goes, why would you want to know my name? And he goes, well, I want to know because I want to know who I'm looking at. And that's when it starts to really sort of escalate into this really horrific scenario where she's now fighting for her life. She has to answer horror movie questions. Otherwise, she and her boyfriend are going to die. And it starts off very simple, like name the killer in Halloween. It's Michael Myers. But then she has a question where he goes, name the killer in Friday the 13th. And to anyone who isn't very familiar with the horror genre, they'll immediately say Jason Voorhees or Jason, the guy in the hockey mask, because people know Friday the 13th, they know the image of the killer in the hockey mask. So they'll immediately think, just on a whim, just through, osmosis, cultural osmosis, I think they call it, that the killer is Jason Voorhees. But then Ghostface goes, sorry, that's the wrong answer. You'll know that, Jason's mother, Mrs. Voorhees, Pamela Voorhees, was the original killer in the first film. Jason didn't kill until the sequel. And that's one of the things that I will definitely say is that one of the key strengths of this film is the voice of the killer. The voice of the killer was done by Roger L. Jackson, who a lot of fans of the Cartoon Network show The Powerpuff Girls will know as the voice of Mojo Jojo. And he does a very fantastic job. He does this very good job of really kind of sounding calm yet slightly menacing. And it just is one of those things where it just goes deep into his gut almost. You feel like his voice is coming from. And it really is a fantastic vocal performance. But what's really great about the sequence is it establishes the killer wearing a black gown with little sparkles, little bits of, embedded sparkle in it, like little gems of crystals or whatever in the fabric to give it kind of like this luminous feel. But it's a cloak that's very long, and he's wearing a ghost face mask with a hood. And it's very creepy. That image is very creepy, but at the same time, the cloak is very impractical because the killer, when he's trying to attack his victims, he always stumbles, he always falls, or always slips and falls on his arse and things like that. Like he really isn't all that well versed in pursuing his victims, because he always chooses a costume that's very impractical and you're always prone to falling, slipping and sliding in them. And I think to myself, they were probably committed when the first kill happened. Like, we've got to have this costume, and all these other things. Like, we've got to have this because otherwise it's not gonna work as well. But this opening sequence is really suspenseful, very atmospheric, and very kind of creepy and really disturbing. But what's very compelling about it as well is when Drew Barrymore's character of Casey Becker goes outside, she sees her parents coming up the driveway in their car, and she immediately runs for them and tries to get their attention. But then just she's about to call out and scream, she gets stabbed in the chest, and she manages to throw Ghostface off her. But then she tries to call out, but she's been stabbed in the chest, so when she calls out to her mum, her voice literally goes, "Mom!" Like she literally can't get the words out. She can't get the scream out. And it's horrible because her mum and dad are right there. They're about to go into the house. And that was a very heartbreaking moment, and it re-established the tone of, these victims aren't just going to be your average summer camp bimbos who are just really dumb or really horny or whatever. They're literally going to be people with characters and lives outside of this horrific event. And I really like that about this film. I really like the fact that they took that extra care to really show this is happening to a human being, and this isn't just happening to some dumb teenager who just runs, runs, trips and falls and does stupid things for the sake of it. She genuinely is a character who has agency outside of just being the first victim. And I really like that. So the film basically follows in its entirety a group of friends who are in the grip of a serial killer in a small town. The main character is named Sidney Prescott, played by Neve Campbell, who is who basically has an entire backstory before the film even starts, where just a year ago her mother was brutally butchered by a serial killer who basically she may or may not have falsely identified as Cotton Weary. And Gail Weathers, who is a tabloid reporter, who's played by Courtney Cox, basically calls her out on this and says, you basically might have falsely identified him because there was no DNA on his jacket, there was no way of doing this, there was previous history that, Maureen and Cotton were having an affair. And it really kind of gives you this impression that even Sydney starts to realise that maybe I was wrong. And if I was wrong about Cotton Weary's involvement in my mother's death, because she says, I saw him leave with his coat on. And then Gail Weathers says to her, well, no, you saw someone leave wearing his coat. That's a big difference. And then Sydney does something which I'm sure a lot of people in those sorts of situations start to consider, like, what if I did get it wrong? What if I did, falsely identify Cotton? And if I have, the killer's still out there. And she also starts to get very anxious and very sad about the idea that, you know, people are starting to say that Maureen Prescott had a bit of a reputation in Woodsboro, a bit of a negative reputation, and it starts to really dishearten her because she's also getting pressured by her boyfriend Billy Loomis, played by Skeet Ulrich, who is gorgeous, by the way. But yeah, I absolutely think he is fantastic in this role. He basically was cast, and no word of a lie, he was cast solely on the basis of him looking slightly like Johnny Depp. And Johnny Depp, if you know your horror movie trivia, Johnny Depp starred in another Wes Craven film called A Nightmare on Elm Street. He was in the first Nightmare on Elm Street film as Glenn, and I really like that. I like the fact that even in his introduction, he's introduced by climbing through Sydney's window into her room, and I really like that little detail. That, oh, they clearly know what they're doing with this character. They know they know the sort of game that they're playing with the audience and things like that. So I really love that. So she's really anxious about having sex with her boyfriend Billy because he keeps on pressuring her into sexual intercourse, but she doesn't want to. And then she starts to realize that, oh, maybe, you know, the rumors about her and Cotton were true. And she goes, do you think it's true? And her friend Tatum, who's probably one of the best characters in the entire film, and it's a shame she died in this version, in this film, because she's a great character. She has so many great lines. She says, well, you can't prove a rumor. That's the whole entire idea behind a rumor. And she goes, but no, seriously, you do start to think, you know, maybe that there is some truth to that rumor. And then Tatum goes, well, you can only hear that Richard Gere gerbil story before you eventually start believing it. You have to start believing it. And I really love that. So there's a lot of really great one-liners. There's my favourite one in the entire film is where she goes to her brother Dewey, played by David Arquette. Come on, we got to go now, Dewey, and things like that. And she goes, what did Mum say? When I wear this badge and this uniform, you address me as an officer of the law. And his superior, his second in command, Sheriff Burke, his first in command, his sort of, you know, his superior, Sheriff Burke says, take them out the back, like get them out of the way of this media circus. And just as they're about to leave, you hear Dewey say, he's my superior. And then Tatum goes, the janitor's your superior. And it's also a bit of a wonderful in-joke because when the principal, Himbry, is about to, spoiler alert, get killed, there's a scene where he says under his breath as he's opening a door, little shits, and then it cuts to a shot of the janitor in a green, it's sort of like a green and red striped sweater vest, cleaning the floors of the hallway. He looks up and he says, what did you call me? And he's played by Wes Craven, who's the director of this film. So I thought that was a very interesting detail. And yeah, this film's fantastic, and I really do love the attention to detail on the characters and the stories. I like the fact that Sydney is kind of established as a certain rule in the horror film that if you have sex, you're basically pegged to be killed at some point. But what's very interesting is that Sydney has sex with Billy, and Billy does this so that he could mark her for death. But what's very interesting is she has sex with Billy and she doesn't die. She basically, you know, is able to overcome this horror. And I really like that. And I really do love the idea that the entirety of the Ghostface gimmick is that the killer is meant to be hidden under the mask, and they played it like it's a murder mystery, like anybody could be this killer, anybody could be under that mask. And that's what I really love about the Scream franchise as a whole, is that you really do have this impression that anybody could be under that mask, anybody could be, you know, playing the role of Ghostface. So they basically do two things at once, which is they're trying to create an icon, a character to basically put on posters in the same way that you'd put someone like Freddy Krueger on a poster for Nightmare on Elm Street, or Michael Myers for Halloween, or Jason Voorhees for the Friday the 13th series, or even Chucky for the Child's Play series. but they're also trying to give it this flair of, oh, he can be anybody. He could be anybody. Anybody could be under that mask. And that's what I really like. So it gives it that kind of refreshing aspect to it. Like every single installment is a different killer, a different suspect, or a different line of suspects. And it really does a very good job. It reminds me of a very Agatha Christie type murder mystery where, you know, anybody in this small circle of friends, anybody could be the culprit, anybody could be the murderer. And that really adds a certain level of originality and uniqueness to the franchise. And it really makes me want to, whenever a new Scream film comes out, I'm always really excited. Like, just from the murder mystery aspect alone, really gets me hooked. So, spoiler alert, for those of you who haven't seen the first Scream film, the killer is revealed to be not one person, but two people. And the two people are Billy Loomis and Stu Mocker. And they basically are under the impression, we're basically under the impression that they don't really have a motive, or at least Stu doesn't really have a really clear motive of why he's doing these things. But Billy says in a very good line that, oh, did they ever give Norman Bates a motive? Did they ever decide why Hannibal Lecter liked to eat people? Don't think so. And things like that. So he knows that there is a motive in his heart, but Kevin Williamson did this very wonderful thing where he kind of does both. He kind of gives one killer a motive, which is Billy. Billy actually has the motive that because of his mother's reputation, because of Sidney Prescott's reputation, negative reputation, one of the people that she actually had a fling with was Billy Loomis's father, and it was that infidelity that actually caused his mother to basically move out and abandon him. So he feels very kind of broken and disheartened by it, so he decides to take revenge on Maureen by killing her brutally and basically framing another man. And Stu doesn't really have a motive, he's just kind of along for the ride kind of thing. So he manages to do both. He manages to give the killers a motive whilst not really having a motive at all. And that, I think, is very very interesting, but it's also very weird. But I really do like the entirety of the climax. I think it's very well choreographed. I like the fact that you really do get this sense of... What I really like about the Scream franchise is even when you are in a location where it's very big and very vast, like the Mocker house at the very end of the film, they always do a very good job of having an initial setup moment where you're going through the house, you're going through all the different bedrooms, all the rest of it. You're trying to get a layout of where everything is so that when the Ghostface killer shows up, you're immediately, clocking where every hiding place is, where every, room that's untouched or that's unoccupied, you're always in it, and you're always, trying to keep tabs of where everything is. So it really kind of gives this very fun, almost scary maze feel to how the actual scene is basically given this very detailed approach. It's almost like when you draw a map of a mansion in a Cluedo game, or whenever it's in an Agatha Christie novel, they always give you the layout of the crime scene kind of thing. So it gives you that kind of impression, and it's just very well done. And this film is just fantastic. It's one of my favourite films, one of my favourite horror franchises of all time, because of the murder mystery aspect alone, but also because of the characters and because of how much care and attention that both Kevin Williamson and Wes Craven were able to bring to the table. And when they decided to continue on with the Scream franchise after Wes Craven's death, that was a very sad time for me, because I feel like Wes Craven really gave a special kind of magic to the Scream franchise that probably won't be recaptured in its entirety to this new franchise, this new leg of the Scream franchise. But I'm very hopeful with the way it's been going so far. And if you want to know my thoughts on Scream 5 and the new Scream, well, check out my reviews when I eventually post them. But that's all I have to say about the Scream 1996. I hope you enjoyed this video. It's been Josh with Whimsical and Interesting Musings. And let me know in the comments, if you're a fan of the Scream franchise, what's your favourite Scream film? I'd love to know in the comments. And what do you think about the Scream franchise as a whole? What do you like about it if you are a fan? And This has been Josh with Whimsical and Interesting Musings. I hope you're all having a very good day. Take care. Bye bye for now.